The story of Cinderella is so widespread that its heroine's name has become its own archetype. It is listed in several dictionaries as a term, with the Merriam-Webster dictionary as an example, defining it as both one suffering undeserved neglect and as one suddenly lifted from obscurity to honor and significance. Cinderella is the archetypical tale of a woman whose virtue is being repressed by factors outside of her control, only to find salvation through something bringing out the beauty that was always already deep inside of her. The Cinderella archetype has been the object of much creative and uncreative rewriting and retelling. And yet, despite the fervent changing of theme and morals, the base narrative has remained stable. Cinderella still is Cinderella. And the same holds true for the interpretation given in Nikke. It incorporates all of the same archetypical attributes, yet only in special relationship to its own themes and world. In a world with a humanity driven to near extinction, where young girls are transformed into sentient machines, whose only function is to fight against and die by other machines. Cinderella's story starts when she was but a child, trapped within a city as raptures are assaulting it. But the young Cinderella's eyes noticed at this moment was not the lethal danger posed by the raptures, but instead the people around her, all refusing to save each other, pushing each other out of the way and leaving each other to die. She saw people die and other people be consumed by despair. She herself was likewise overtaken by despair, as hope turned into a distant memory, impossible for her to reclaim. In Cinderella's own words, "I lost my memories, and dignity was a stranger to me." Altogether, Cinderella deemed the scene to be not beautiful. Yet, the retrieval of hope was made possible by the Goddess Squad, a squad of elite Nikke who swiftly destroyed all raptures in the vicinity. To humanity at large, the Goddess Squad and their long litany of successful operations bred hope during an otherwise doomed war. And to Cinderella personally, they became her definition of beauty and pulchritude. This definition would become the guiding philosophy for her life, as well as the ideal that Cinderella sought to emulate. Following her idols, Cinderella agreed to be turned into a Nikke to fight against raptures, and furthermore she possessed enough willpower and skill to become a second-generation Grimm's model. Her technical specifications outperformed those of even the Goddess Squad. Cinderella also mentions twice throughout the prologue that her memories from prior to that prologue are gone, further solidifying this newfound ideal as the core of her existence. In no longer having her memories from before the rapture invasion, this encounter not only marks the beginning of a new life, but the beginning of her life period. And finally, in the present day, she was assigned to a joint operation together with the Goddess Squad in order to attack the space elevator that acted as the rapture's base. Now, Cinderella was undoubtedly beautiful. Yet, at the apex of her beauty, on the day that she finally was going to fight alongside her idols, her comrade and close friend Red Shoes infected Cinderella with the corruption virus. This turned her into the world's first heretic, a series of Nikkes who have turned traitor against mankind. Cinderella became Anachiro, and as Anachiro she would crush her comrades, slaughter countless fellow Nikkes and human alike, and finally she would thwart the Goddess Squad's attack on the space elevator. Although Anachiro's rampage was eventually ended by the Goddess Squad, it was already too late by this point. The prior defeat of the Goddess Squad, entirely due to Anachiro's interference, snuffed out humanity's last flicker of hope. Consequently, the surface was abandoned and humanity fled underground into the Ark. Cinderella's legacy was not one of heroics, but instead that of despair. Her previous beauty was now shattered. The corruption of her beauty becomes all the more devastating when you take a look at the context in which it took place. Looking at the visuals of the Old Tales prologue, it becomes clear that Cinderella was still of a very young age during this first encounter with the Goddess Squad. She presumably signed up to become a Nikke and consequently was turned into one soon thereafter. We do already know that the united forces of humanity had no qualms about turning girls as young as 12 into their war machines, as their minds were deemed capable enough of handling the Nikkification process. The relationship of Cinderella and the other second generation Grimm's models with Abe also hints at a younger age, with Abe acting more like a parental figure than a counselor and engineer. The advice he gives to Cinderella and Siren is similar to that of a mother raising her daughters. Although no exact age for Cinderella nor time span for the rapture invasion can be given, it seems unlikely that there was a significant amount of time between the prologue, Cinderella becoming a Nikke, and the main Hootclesia event story. At the very least, Cinderella spent the majority of her adolescent years as a Nikke, and once paired with the erasure of her memories prior to meeting the Goddess Squad, and having spent all of her Nikkified life restricted within her research base, it was inevitable that the Goddess Squad would become the central focus of her life, and thus that her corruption would seemingly ruin her entire life. Cinderella's loss of beauty was narrated through the game's second anniversary event story, Old Tales. The special currency used within this event describes her shattered beauty. The mirror fragments are described as a shard of mirror that can no longer be restored. It can be used as a mirror and injures those who touch it. But that's okay, even though it's shattered, it's still a mirror. Just piece it back together. Although there will be marks, it doesn't change the fact that it's still a mirror. Like Cinderella, the mirror shards have become irreparably damaged. Both are unable to fulfill their talos, and both are harmful to those who come into contact with them. Despite these claims that the mirror can no longer be restored, this description points out that despite all, it's still a mirror. Despite the scars, the mirror can be restored to functionality. The event's other item, the shattered hand mirror, raises the same question by asking if a shattered hand mirror can still be considered a hand mirror. Likewise, after having her beauty shattered by becoming an Achiro, after ruining humanity's hopes of retaking the surface and forcing them to flee underground, after becoming the mortal enemy of those she idolized, can Cinderella still be beautiful? To answer this question, we first need to explore Cinderella's unique definition of beauty and the importance of mirrors within that definition. In a story that rarely brings up the physical appeal of its cyborgs, Cinderella debuts to proudly declare her own beauty supreme, and not without good reason. She looks gorgeous, she knows it, and she makes it abundantly clear that she knows this. During her first meeting with the commander, she spends most of the time gazing at her own reflection. At the end of this conversation, she beckons him to go outside without her, so she can admire her own appearance for a short while longer. She also requests the installation of mirrors throughout Reclamation Site B, and during one of her counseling sessions is in favor of transforming all of the floors into marble ones. In chapter 33, she temporarily pauses the operation to admire her own and the commander's reflection inside a puddle. And during that same operation, she spends over 10 minutes washing herself to clean off Leviathan's dark matter. One of her blah blah conversations with the commander reveals that she filled her phone's gallery with pictures of herself, while her side quest revolves around her requesting the Countess's help in finding her a new mirror. Once asked why she needs a mirror, she answers, "I must be beautiful at all times, so I require a mirror. That way I can see myself clearly anytime, anywhere." Evidently, to her sense of life it is paramount to admire and maintain her beauty. When, during that same side quest, Anise snaps that they all know she's pretty, Cinderella simply responds with, "I know, I am beauty incarnate." Yet these words are not said gloatingly or braggadly as you would assume them to be, but instead as a simple statement of fact. To Cinderella, she simply is beautiful, in the same way that things fall downwards, or that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. That she is beautiful and that beauty is supreme are her ultimate truisms. Beauty should be attained because it is beautiful. Beauty is good because it is good. To be beautiful is for life to be worth living. To become and remain beautiful are what one lives for. Her belief in this truism is unshakable. This comes to show in chapter 33 when Anise criticizes Cinderella's prattling about beauty and other nonsense.
Yes, it's hard enough staying alive out here. Who's got time to care about looks? You have no idea how bad things are. Beauty and other such notions are long gone, vanished to the realm of myth. We're in a world where those concepts are no longer important, nor should they be.
Despite Anice's rejection of beauty, however, the thought of it being impractical does not cross Cinderella's mind. Instead, she wonders if Anice once desired to be beautiful, but having abandoned the desire since, now resents the idea of beauty. There are no doubts in Cinderella's mind. It is good to be beautiful. However, despite the seemingly constant gloating about her own looks, Cinderella's definition of beauty does not pertain solely to her appearance, nor do her comments about appearance for that matter include only traditional beauty standards. Of course, several of the occasions when Cinderella mentions beauty can be chalked up to mere vanity. The aforementioned scenes of her admiring her own beauty in a mirror or cleaning herself up after becoming dirty are easy examples of this. Yet many other mentions of beauty stray away from this looks-obsessed stereotype which she, at first meeting, seems to embody. During her counseling sessions, there are many things she considers beautiful outside of physical appearance. For example, she calls humanity beautiful for refusing to give up the war for the surface even after 100 years have passed. And if one were to prioritize looking for their own comrades over winning the war, she likewise considers that to be beautiful, despite it being reckless and foolhardy by her own admission. She also calls Grave one of the most beautiful people alive, both during counseling sessions and during chapter 33. She praises Grave for her brilliant mind in being able to single-handedly construct each of the second-generation Grimm's models, with technology no other engineer of her time or since then has been able to reconstruct. Simultaneously, she compliments Grave's dedication to guarding her comatose body for 100 years. This dedication comes to a culmination in chapter 32 when Cinderella finally awakens, reuniting the two. During this scene, Grave preemptively apologizes to Cinderella for her lack of beauty, referring to her heavier voice and scarred face. And yet, Cinderella's reply is simple.
My face is badly damaged. You might not recognize me. My voice has changed as well. It may not sound familiar to you anymore.
Beautiful. You were always so beautiful. You still are. You protected me.
Cinderella?
What should I do now? Tell me, my greatest audience.
What we were supposed to do long ago. What we wanted to accomplish so badly, but were unable to. Our enemy. The enemy of humanity. Bring them down. My goddess of victory.
She deems Grave beautiful, despite her appearance markedly not being that, clearly indicating that beauty for Cinderella encompasses more than mere appearances. That is not to say that physical looks are not of a high personal importance to her, yet it shows that physical beauty is only one facet of beauty, rather than its fulcrum. This contrast between vanity and regard for others is further visualized by the 2.5-year anniversary skins for Cinderella and Grave. Cinderella's skin is named Beautiful Me, its name framed through Cinderella's viewpoint, and consequently matches her high self-regard. The skin's action pose has to take a selfie while displaying a keychain with Cinderella's own name and image on it. By naming the skin Beautiful Me, it tells that Cinderella not only finds herself beautiful, but also finds it important to acknowledge this. At the same time, Grave's skin is named Beautiful Hue, following the same naming scheme as Cinderella's skin, and likewise is to be viewed as Cinderella's opinion of Grave. Here, it is Grave whom she finds beautiful, and by acknowledging Grave's beauty in the same fashion as her own, it further stresses her loyalty to beauty qua beauty. Another example of Cinderella's alternative view on beauty comes to light in chapter 33 during another argument with Anice. This time, Anice calls it ludicrous to expect an eventual end to the war and thus a reclamation of the surface. This is said in response to Cinderella's description of her own purpose as being simply eliminating the raptures and reclaiming the surface. Agnès considers it impossible to ever accomplish this, and upon Cinderella rebuking that attitude as disgraceful, Agnès angrily retaliates that it is no virtue to sacrifice oneself. In response to that, Cinderella clarifies herself.
So, not wanting to sacrifice yourself for humanity is disgraceful?
That's not quite what I meant. Allow me to elaborate. Risking your life without good reason is disgraceful. Because you would be throwing away the most precious thing without purpose. You are all going to face Behemoth. So you're putting your lives on the line right now. So I'm curious, what is the reason for your doing so? What is it that makes you willing to potentially give your life? What do you strive for? What do you live for? I don't know your story. But you mustn't amble through life thoughtlessly, merely doing what you're told. That's no story at all. I am my own master. If you have not found a reason, then you must do so quickly. It would be far from beautiful if you were to die before finding one.
What Cinderella's answer here makes clear is that sacrifice on its own is not something beautiful, nor is a lack of belief in humanity's victory necessarily ugly. What is disgraceful is Agnès' lack of belief in victory while still fighting for victory. She is supporting a cause that she rejects, one that can potentially lead to her own death. For Cinderella, in this interaction, what is beautiful is not fighting for some lofty ideal assigned to you, but fighting for a cause of your own choice. If one were to lay down their own lives fighting for an ideal, it must be an ideal of your own choosing. This forms the essence of Cinderella's notion of being beautiful. To be beautiful is an act of forming your own ideals and pursuing them unhindered and unbothered by any other person's opinion and interference. Grace was beautiful, for she was devoted to accomplishing her goal of reviving Cinderella. Agnès similarly can become beautiful by finding a goal of her own to pursue, rather than fighting without knowing why. Following this mission, this is what Agnès would begin doing, taking an absence from the next operation to self-reflect and resolve lingering hang-ups. This is also why Cinderella embodies beauty so naturally. Her entire life is devoted to her chosen ideal, while accepting no compromises along the way. Cinderella's beauty is not a bromidic and tired incarnation of the vain cheerleader archetype who domineers her peers for popularity and beauty, contrasted against the outcast who ultimately attains victory through their superior moral character or intelligence. Not only does Cinderella's notion of beauty repudiate this dichotomy of looks contra smarts, appearance contra intelligence, and body contra mind, it likewise rejects mind-body neutrality. One cannot have a beautiful body with a rotten personality, nor, as is considered more contestable, can one excel morally whilst neglecting their body. Mind and body are integrated rather than separated under Cinderella's notion of beauty. One of many exhibits of this is her refusal to transform into the animalistic form that all other heretics have access to, labeling such a form as decidedly not beautiful. Not only do those transformations look grotesque in appearance, they also represent a full abandonment of one's allegiance to humanity by becoming fully alike a rapture. Although this notion of beauty integrates appearance and moral character, it does not do so through debased means such as physiognomic judgments of character. To be born ugly or deformed, or to become so through an accident, does not condemn one to the realm of the non-beautiful. In Cinderella's own words, even if during a battle you become caked in mud and soaked in blood, afterwards you can become beautiful again. If you desire to become beautiful, it shall happen instantaneously, not through some primacy of consciousness-based warping of reality, but because deciding to become beautiful means to strive to be beautiful, which on its own is already beautiful. To be beautiful is to become authentic, to become the ruler of your own life and actions, and for your soul to be subservient to no one else. In deciding to act authentically and take ownership of one's own life, one immediately becomes authentic. To honestly strive towards beauty is to become beautiful, albeit not in the same manner as someone like Cinderella who already is beautiful. Understanding beauty as I have so far, it also allows us to make sense of the frequent allusions made by Cinderella towards narratological constructs. Take as an example the earlier mentioned conversation where Cinderella refers to going through life without purpose as no story at all. Her standard lobby quotes also revolve around rewriting and changing her story. And during her revival at the climax of chapter 32, she and Grave both state that every story needs a happy ending, that their story will be rewritten, and it has Cinderella call Grave her foremost audience. The phrases about rewriting the story are obvious allusions to Cinderella's past as an hero. Yet framing the other lines through the verbiage of storytelling can only be understood by relating it to beauty. When Cinderella says that a thoughtless life is no story at all, she directly implies that every life should be lived as if it were a story. A proper narrative is a sequence of logically connected events, one leading into another, then finally culminating into a conclusion. Because part of Cinderella's beauty involves taking control over your life, and thus making the attainment of your own values your priority. It involves becoming the author of your own life. You become the one who decides how the parts of your existence are sequenced together, and by sequencing your life in such a way to enable the acquiring of your values, and thus to become beautiful, is to turn your life into a story. Every story, accordingly, needs to have a happy ending as well, one where it concludes with the actual attainment of beauty. Hence Cinderella's focus on not merely telling her own story, but on retelling it, as the victim of corruption, as someone who forcefully had her happy ending taken from her. The retelling of her own story is now her highest priority. And yet, to talk about retelling your story, about becoming beautiful again, means to have once upon a time be ugly, anti-life, a heretic. The scars of her corruption are still visible in her drooping right eye and through her red pupils. To properly talk about being beautiful, we also need to talk about the unspoken, the ugliness of corruption. When Cinderella is introduced in the main campaign, one of her first personality quirks shown is her fascination with gazing upon her own reflection. She uses a hand mirror within the infirmary, requests the installation of more mirrors throughout Reclamation Site B, and requests the help of the Countess to find a crystal to serve as a better mirror. Mirrors initially appear as another object of her vanity, yet, like her sense of beauty, their full meaning is complex and multifaceted. Cinderella does love the reflection of her own self and indulges in witnessing her beauty. Yet this is not their only function. A clue is given when Cinderella remarks that there are so many mirrors present, following a conversation referring to the commander and the other Countess members. An early clue for what mirrors mean to Cinderella is given during the earlier mentioned side quest. After an inflammatory comment about being beauty incarnate, Cinderella follows with an account of how, once upon a time, she was not beautiful at all. As the heretic and a hero, she harmed and killed humans and Nikkes alike, operating under the deluded belief that this would lead a beloved goddess squad to salvation. Recognizing the reality of her past ugliness, Cinderella needs to ensure she never becomes ugly again. This makes it clear that to Cinderella, gazing upon herself is not only a recognition of her physical beauty, but also a post-traumatic tactic to ensure she remains beautiful in its fullest sense. One of her counseling sessions also shows this, after Cinderella informs the commander of having had a nightmare in which she was corrupted. The commander, rather than console her verbally, does so wordlessly by handing her a mirror. The reflection of that mirror is enough to reconfirm that she is still beautiful. Mirrors show beauty, both the physical and moral kind. Although this proves that mirrors and reflections act as surrogates for a person's inner beauty, it does not explain how the mirrors do this. What aspect of the reflection is altered by corruption, and the part that is then altered again once the corruption is undone, remains unmentioned throughout the main campaign. Cinderella's eyes did not revert to their blue color after the corruption ended, nor did any other change in her appearance occur. To give an answer to this, we need to look away from the main campaign and instead take a closer look at Old Tales, Cinderella's designated event story. In Old Tales, we find that despite how large of a role mirrors play in Cinderella's character in the present day, the metaphor was surprisingly absent prior to her corruption. No scenes are shown where she gazes upon her reflection, nor do mirrors show up in her vernacular. The very first showcase of her reflection takes place at the very onset of Cinderella's corruption. It happens suddenly. One moment, Cinderella is walking down the hallway with her allies, and another second, she finds herself bumping into a wall of glass, detached from her corporeal reality. Cinderella loses all control over herself, unable to do anything but watch, as the newly created Anachiro gives out a calling signal for Raptures to destroy their base while bludgeoning her friends to pieces with Cinderella's own hands. She tears Raptures into two, smashes Siren's jaw to a pulp, and rips off Hansel and Gretel's arms. Throughout this entire process, Cinderella can only watch on while screaming, begging and shrieking. She protests that Anachiro's face, body and weaponry are all hers, and yet it is all futile. What she finds once she looks at her own reflection is described as a pair of dreamless eyes that have lost all sense of purpose. Her control over herself is annulled, and her body acts independent of her will. This scene has the first chronological instance of mirrors. Once Cinderella becomes corrupted, she becomes stuck within a void world. The only connection to the real world is through some kind of floating portal, which allows Cinderella only to look upon Anachiro's actions, while Anachiro decimates Cinderella's squad mates. The scene remains transfixed on a heretic's dead-eyed stare as her face gets progressively more soaked in blood. Her face remains unchanging throughout the scene, unaffected by the brutalization of her comrades. With the scene being framed through Cinderella's eyes, this focus on Anachiro's face turns the heretic into the story's first mirror. By gazing into the mirror, Cinderella becomes witness to her own loss of beauty, as Anachiro destroys all that she loved. When Cinderella then gazes upon her own reflection, she finds a face filled with sorrow and bereft of hope. The second mirror. Both showcase her loss, the first that of her body, the second that of her hope. With her hope snuffed out, Cinderella allows Anachiro to destroy without any further protestation. Soldiers, innocent civilians, and even her squad mates once again become the victim of Anachiro's rampage. Her inner world throughout these events is shown parallel to the events occurring while the corruption slowly takes its hold upon Cinderella. The ending to the mock minigame, which this scene is an adaptation of, describes how Cinderella's reflection appears on countless simmering surfaces, to the point where she is unable to tell which one is her true self. Every reflection shows a different self, disorienting the Nikke and making it impossible for her to determine what is real and what is not. Due to this loss of selfhood, Cinderella begins to ask the mirror who she is, and the corruption talks back, eventually convincing her that to help the goddesses is to destroy humanity.
I will do it. I will save the goddesses. I will kill everyone.
Very good. You are a most benevolent child. How great my relief is. Now go. Kill everyone. Do it for the goddesses.
Yes, for them.
Yes, everything for the goddesses.
Everything for the goddesses.
Everything for the goddesses.
Everything for the goddesses.
Everything for the queen.
Everything for the queen.
In this scene, Cinderella's love for the goddess squad is turned against her. The epistemological chaos of reflections makes it impossible for her to determine beauty and reality, and this tricks Cinderella into becoming something definitively non-beautiful. At this point, it is another mirror that brings change. Despite Cinderella's loss of hope, her creator and surrogate mother Abe hasn't yet. After enduring a barrage of threatening yet non-lethal blasts from Anichiro's glass slippers, Abe seizes one of the slippers and turns it around towards Anichiro, once again exposing Cinderella to her own reflection. This time, the vision is not one of despair, but one of pure malevolence. Anichiro's red eyes burn into the reflection, while Anichiro is cradling a severed Product 23 head, the same model as Abe. This sight returns Cinderella to full awareness of herself, out of the narcoleptic state of mind that had festered so far. Through the absence of her will, the disengagement with the world at large, Cinderella had permitted something non-beautiful to wreak havoc. And now she knows it. Upon witnessing this horrible reflection, Cinderella resolves to end Anichiro with the limited capacity she still has, namely by further embracing the corruption, in order to make Anichiro wage battle with the Goddess Squad, a battle she believes she could not possibly survive.
There's no way I can win. How could I possibly defeat the goddesses? Go. Go and fulfill your mission. And once that is done, kill Cinderella.
And yet, despite her crushing defeat at the hands of the Goddess Squad, Cinderella would not only not die, but even be cured. The experimental substance named Vapaus destroyed the nymph within her brains, consequently destroying the corruption as well. Anichiro was gone, while Cinderella regained full corporeal control. Her past and legacy, however, were no longer her own. After Cinderella is freed from her confines within the research facility, the researcher responds in fear, pleading to her to have mercy. Her squad mates Siren, Hansel and Gretel likewise are suspicious and fearful of Cinderella, not quite able to believe that Anichiro is fully gone. These fears are corroborated to them after Cinderella kills Red Shoes for infecting her with the corruption code. The other Old Tales members refuse to believe that the Red Shoes could be responsible for something that reprehensible. And yet Cinderella counters. None of them are willing to consider whether Cinderella would kill her own friend in cold blood. None of them had asked whether she was doing okay, and Hansel and Gretel had shrieked back in fear when Cinderella approached them earlier. She no longer was a mirror to them. Following her corruption and becoming Anichiro, they no longer saw her as an equal, as a fellow Nikke, as a friend. Instead, she was a monster in their eyes. The taint of her corruption of Anichiro was still present within their minds, its memory suppressing the reality of the present. The ugliness of her past pervaded into the present.
You feel the same way, Siren? Then what about me? What about me? You think I would kill Red Shoes without cause? Why isn't anyone hearing out my side of the story? Why I did it, or what happened? I'm back. I'm all better now. Why don't you believe me? Why didn't any of you? When I saw you all a while ago, why didn't anyone ask if I was okay? Huh? When you all look at me, what do you see? Okay, I understand now. Even after what I put you through, you were willing to meet with me. I'm grateful for that. But I guess I had the wrong impression. You simply wanted to see a monster.
After secluding herself from everyone else, Cinderella determines that she, as Anichiro, has brought about too much suffering and death. Her story has come to an end, with no possibility to alter course.
My life is no longer a beautiful fairy tale. I am a traitor to humanity. A monster. A heretic. That's the way my story has been written. A failed story. A fairy tale that is not beautiful must be erased.
The purpose of fairy tales is to be beautiful, to evoke a sense of wonder and exaltation, to inspire hope. For a fairy tale to fail at accomplishing any of these goals is for it to lose its purpose. Cinderella's goal to be beautiful and to become a goddess of victory appears to have become mute. The fairy tale about her own life has flopped, and thus Cinderella judges her own life needs to be eliminated. It is only because of Abe's interference that Cinderella's suicide was prevented, and consequently it is because of Abe that Cinderella realizes that she can be beautiful still. Abe once again uses mirrors to portray this, even if Cinderella's mirror is covered in blood. Abe shows that her blood can be swiped away. She tells Cinderella, whenever you are struggling, don't allow your image to define you. Instead, look at your true self. When Cinderella maintains that she betrayed humanity, Abe once again points at the mirror, replying that it's not Enichiro who is reflected there. The mirror only reflects what is truly there, even if Cinderella's own perception is mistaken, or if the reflection is covered by blood or mud. The true reflection can never be distorted, even if the reflection from a normal mirror isn't beautiful. Abe tells Cinderella to instead look into Abe's eyes. There, she will find a true mirror, a true reflection of her own beauty. The mirror acts as a metaphysical reflection of a person's beauty, exposing Cinderella to her degrading beauty during every phase of her corruption. And yet, the mirror works both ways, and thus the mirror gains a redemptive function during the second half of Old Tales. Not only does it show how Enichiro is objectively disgusting, it also tells Cinderella that she is objectively beautiful. The mirror becomes the tool for which Cinderella can reconfirm her humanity, even if the surface is covered in the blood of innocents, all murdered by Enichiro. That blood can be swiped away, while the sorrow in Cinderella's eyes proves that she is not Enichiro. The mirror has one message for her, namely, she is Cinderella and she is beautiful. That is how Cinderella realizes what the reflection truly means, and thus that she can rewrite the fairy tale, her fairy tale.
A person who, when in despair, received help from the goddesses and then idolized them. Someone who wanted to stand on the battlefield alongside them and applied for that privilege. Who worked really hard and became a second-generation Grimm's model. A person who took great pride in that truth. Someone who took thousands, tens of thousands of tests. Who always strived to achieve the best results. Who never gave up on her dreams. Who was always proud and full of confidence. A person who loved their comrades. Someone who loved humanity. A person who loved myself. The most beautiful person in the world.
And this Cinderella you're describing, what did she want to do?
Defeat those who would harm humanity and protect the human race. To rewrite the story.
During this depressive episode, Cinderella was not beautiful. She was not Cinderella, as Cinderella is someone who loves herself, someone who wished to protect humanity and to rewrite the story. Cinderella had followed the lead of the goddess squad, of the panicking scientist, and of her fearful squad members, and begun to feel herself as something other than Cinderella, something closer to Enichiro. But the scene demonstrates that, by recognizing her own true self, she can be beautiful again. I began this video by asking what type of Cinderella is Nikke's Cinderella. Like the original Cinderella from Perrault's tale, our Cinderella was dealt a terrible hand by fate, one that was entirely out of her control. In both cases, it was also Cinderella's inner beauty that ultimately shone through, just as the grace of Perrault's Cinderella came out victorious in the end, despite the dusty clothes. So our Cinderella's beauty, even after all of the slanderous atrocities that Enichiro committed under her face. Both Cinderellas are stories about recognition, by the world and by oneself. Perrault's Cinderella was always graceful, it was just the exterior world who needed to recognize her as such. Nikke's Cinderella was always beautiful, and the resolution of her character arc revolves around her recognizing that she still is. For our Cinderella, this recognition is a more active scenario. She still has to rewrite her story to give her fairy tale a happy ending. Regardless, the crux of both stories is the same. It is not the inner self that needs to be changed, but instead the perception of one's inner self.
A story that was once defiled and kept from the world. An old, forgotten fairy tale. Now, in this place, in this very moment, it will be rewritten.
Tell me, am I beautiful now?
You are radiant.